or you can see by the big banner here, during this season of Lent, the pastors in the area and the congregations have joined together to do a round robin. And the purpose is to get to know each other a little better and see each other. But our theme this year has to do with how we can grow in our faith, how we can grow in our relationship with God, and maybe even with one another. Talking about different faith practices, and we're particularly using the model by Rich Mulheim called the Faith 5. It's really handy. It's 5 things. You do it every night, and it's a way to have a pattern, something to do. It is targeted at families with children at home. But those of us who don't have children at home, those who are single like me, we know how to adapt. We have to adapt a lot, don't we? And that's all right. So using this, it's still a model worth talking about. The first part is sharing your highs and lows, a highlight from the day and a low point from the day, a joy or a sorrow. If you don't have somebody at home to do that with, one of the things I've been trying with some success is to take a note card, and on the note card you put the date. So today is the 26th. So I put the date, March 26th, and then I put the year, 2014, and I simply record my highlight for the day and my low point for the day. I'm using the language of what am I most grateful for today and what am I least grateful today. And it's a good, healthy practice to put it on paper, and I imagine if I keep it up, it'll be interesting to see a year from now what those things are. And it's not a whole journal, it's just a way to think about my highs and in my lows. And then reading the Bible, you can do that together. Again, if you don't have someone there, you certainly can read from Christ in Our Home, or the Celebrate insert, or the bulletin from the Sunday before, or just look in the Bible. Or if you do have little ones at home, get the children's Bible out. It's not hard, but it's a good thing, and it's good to be steeped in the Word every day. Just open it up, and of course, talk about it, think about it. Can you imagine a marriage, a family, where people talk about the Bible every night? What good that would do. It doesn't have to be rocket science. You don't have to preach at each other, but to wonder together, to question, to pray, to be together in faith. Then, of course, praying based on what you've talked about, based on the day, based on what you know the world needs, and blessing each other. It's so easy to yell at each other in frustration. It's easy to curse, but it can be hard to bless, to say words like, I love you, to say you matter, to say, I hope that things go well for you. I pray for you. I care about you. That's blessing. It can be simply tracing the cross on the forehead and saying, you are someone God loves. I love you too. You matter to God and you matter to me. You are forgiven. You are loved. I want the best for you, and may God surround you with good things. Bless each other. Can you imagine a family that blesses each other, where you can feel comfortable? Can you imagine a marriage where husband and wife bless each other every day, every night? So this is our Faith 5, and each pastor has a different topic, and I get to have the first one, sharing. So I'd like to share with you a story. I went to college at Wartburg College in Waverly, Iowa, and I loved college. I loved being out of the home. I loved the classes. I loved living in the dorms. I loved everything about it. And one of the things I enjoyed was a class called Introduction to Philosophy. Now, Introduction to Philosophy is where you get those big ideas, and you get to think about them and wonder about them. Wonderful. I enjoyed it. And I remember one particular philosopher, and I can't remember his name, but he was convinced that animals had a higher order. There was a higher order of species, and that there was kind of this ultimate animal species. And that each animal were at varying degrees of evolution or enlightenment or high form. The animals had different levels of being, and the greatest animal, the most sophisticated, the one who had made it, not human beings, but it was the mighty fish. Fish were considered, in this man's opinion, that fish were the best of all animals can be. If we could all be like fish, then we've made it. Human beings haven't made it to fish status yet. Now he was convinced that fish were the highest order because when fish are born, or they're ready to go. They have nothing to learn. They already have everything they need to know for their whole life known. From the moment, the second they are born, they are able to swim and eat and hunt and be. Fish are ready from the beginning. They need no nurturing from parents. They need no help, nothing to be taught. They just know what to do. Human beings? Not so much. You and I, we're born needy. There is nothing we can do. We depend on the kindness of others. We can't eat, we can't clean ourselves, we can't protect ourselves. We need help. We need to be taught, we need to be protected, we need to be nurtured. Human beings, you and I, were created needy, dependent, and I think God did that for good reason, because it means that we share with one another, that we depend and are depended on. And when we work together, that interdependence for survival, that has made it so that you and I, human beings, have created civilization, works of art and architecture. We have built great things, and we build on the knowledge of one another. Human beings are able to create beautiful and wonderful things, even as we're able to destroy and do terrible things. Fish, I've never heard of a lasting fish dynasty or great works of art by the fish community. Human beings, we are made to depend on each other, to work together, to be dependent and to be depended on. It's the way God made us, and God does that for good reason. We hear that word, bear each other's burdens, and in that way we're fulfilling the law of Christ. God has created us to bear each other's burdens, to share the load, to be in this together. The faith practice we're talking about is simply the act of sharing, of giving our hearts to each other, to share who we are with another human being, and to allow the grace and the space, the acceptance, the love, hospitality to allow others to be themselves with us. What a gift. The gift of sharing each other's burdens. The practice is simply to share your highs and lows, a highlight from the day and a low point from the day. Some people say a joy and a sorrow. I prefer the question, what about today are you most grateful? For what are you most grateful about? I'm trying not to say it with a dangling preposition. What are you most grateful for today? And conversely, what are you least grateful for today? I think it's important that we ask both questions. What are you most grateful for today? We ask that because when you look at the world and you start to think, what am I most grateful for? You start to see things, you see blessings, you see things to be grateful for. It doesn't have to be huge things. It can be simply, you woke up this morning. We got to eat today. Not everybody woke up this morning, and not everybody got to eat. And if you actually liked what you ate today, bonus, extra joy. And if you slept well last night, wonderful. It doesn't have to be big things, but when you start looking at the small things and gather, you start to see blessings all around. Gratitude for all that God has provided, all that is around you. And gratitude, it's from gratitude, thankfulness, that true, resounding joy comes. Joy comes from gratitude. Gratitude is being thankful for what is. The relationships you have right now. The blessings you have right now. It's about what's right now, not what could have been, or should have been, or might be, or it's what's right now. Gratitude is thankfulness for what's here and now, and it's from gratitude that joy springs up. Joy resounding within us. What are you most grateful for today? We ask that question, but we also ask, what are we least grateful for today? And I think that's an important question to ask as well. You don't always have to pretend like life is perfect. There are hard things, ugly things in our world and our lives, and we need to share those too. There is a time and a place when we nail on that smile and pretend to be happy and like everything's good. But we have to, you have to be able to find someone to share the ugliness, to share the hard parts of our lives. Because left alone, left in darkness and shadow, the ugliness gains power and grows and festers. But when we share our burdens, put out that hard and ugly parts, when we put it to the light, it has less power. When you put it out in the light, you can start to deal with things. When you put it out in the light and share that with someone else, they can help bear the load. Not always fix it, but at least be there with you, shouldering the burden. We ask, what are we most grateful for? But we also say, what are we least grateful for today? One of the best stories, I think, ever, but the best story in the Bible about sharing each other's load, bearing each other's burden, is a story of Ruth. Ruth grew up, a girl who grew up in her own country, and we don't know if she fell in love, but she did end up marrying a boy from another country. His family had moved in because of economic reasons. And in Ruth's day and age, in that time and place, when a young woman married, she would leave her family and move in with the in-laws. So she moved in with his mother and father, his brother and his wife, and they all lived together in this home. Now, before Ruth was able to be pregnant, and that was the goal at that time for women to be pregnant as soon as possible, before she was able to get pregnant, tragedy hit the household. Her father-in-law dies. That's a hardship economically, a hardship on the family. But they didn't have much time to grieve because then her brother-in-law dies and then her husband dies. That's terrible, but it was even worse in that day and that time because women had no power. Women couldn't own property. Women only had a few choices. So these three women living together in this household without any men to support or protect them, they had few choices. One was to go back to their people, to go back to their family's household, to their husband, to their father or brother or uncle, and hope against hope that they might take her in, and they might not. She could also beg, a lot of women begging. She could sell herself into slavery and servitude, or she could sell her body. She didn't have many options. So Ruth and her mother-in-law and her sister-in-law were stuck in the middle of grief, in the middle of no good option. The mother-in-law, Naomi, urged the two daughter-in-laws to go back to their people. It seemed like the best option. Go back to your father's house and they might take you in. Both women said, oh no, we can't leave you, we can't leave you. But finally, the sister-in-law left. But Ruth refused to leave Naomi. Refused to leave her side. Even though Naomi was heading back to the place she had fled from, going back to Bethlehem, without a roadmap, without any assurances. She was only going that desperate trek home. Ruth refuses to leave, and that's when we hear those beautiful words. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your God will be my God, your people will be my people. They set off together, bearing each other's burdens, sharing the road, sharing the fear. God provides the most unlikely people for us to share our burdens with. It's not husband and wife, it's not brother or sister or best friends, it's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law bearing each other's burdens, sharing the load, going together. God provides unlikely and people to help us bear our loads, and God, sometimes, when we're very lucky, God uses you and me to be the one to share the load for someone else.